Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Amy Artuso with the National Safety Council. Today's focus is on occupant protection, and I'm very excited to introduce our speakers to you. While I start the introductions, I'm going to ask Emily Thomas to start sharing her screens. This session is being recorded. I do not expect people will receive emails with the recording link, but we do plan to post it online. We're going to hear from our speakers first, and then at the end, we do expect to have time for questions. We're going to leave the chat open. That just feels more interactive to me virtually, but if you have questions you'd like the speakers to respond to, then we are going to look at the Q&A in your toolbar for that. So please enter your questions for the speakers in the Q&A. Emily, I am not seeing your slides yet.
Yeah, sorry, give me 1 second.
That's okay. While you do that, I'm going to start introducing you. Um, I'm thrilled to have Dr. Emily Thomas join us today. She is the Associate Director of Auto Safety at Consumer Reports. Emily leads the Occupant Protection and Vulnerable Road User Safety Program at Consumer Reports Auto Test Center, including the Child Car Seat Program and rear seat safety evaluations for all of Consumer Reports' new vehicles for testing. Her expertise extends to crash safety, vehicular heat stroke prevention, and child passenger safety. Emily has 15 years of automotive safety experience, including as a child passenger safety technician since 2015. She serves on the Center for Child Injury Prevention Studies, or CCHIPS, Industry Advisory Board, and Emily holds a PhD in pediatric injury biomechanics from Drexel University and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Welcome, Dr. Thomas. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks. So many buttons. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Amy, for the introduction, and to the NSC for giving me this opportunity to talk with you guys. So today I'm going to be covering why we need to focus on safety for everybody and in every seating position. So crash testing and vehicle safety has come a long way. For a really long time, we were focusing on front seat passengers because that's where we had the highest rates of injury and fatality. Driving culture was such that when we first introduced safety standards for vehicles, that we predominantly had male drivers. There was maybe not the entire family in the vehicle, but a lot of has changed over time. And the advancements that we've seen so far from vehicle safety and crash testing have improved injury and fatality rates for everyone. However, we find that while we have improved these injury and fatality rates, there's still room to grow. A lot of the features that have been implemented into the front seats to improve crash outcomes are now practically ubiquitous for every new car that comes out. We find seatbelt pretensioners and load limiters for drivers and front seat passengers, frontal and side airbags, side curtain airbags extending, into the second row. These are safety features that people just have come to expect in their vehicles. However, we haven't taken these same safety features that we know are proven effective technologies and now implemented them into the back seats as well. It's also presented an opportunity for us to really optimize and focus on the various demographics that maybe aren't catching up at the same rate or continue to have a disproportionate number of injuries and fatalities. So we can optimize safety for every demographic. A lot of my work is in child passenger safety. However, for many people, that tends to just mean car seats, and they're thinking about children that are really in harnessed car seats. But it's a lot more than that. We're thinking about our kids that are in harnessed car seats, but also graduating to booster car seats, where they're now relying on the vehicle management systems and the advanced seatbelt technologies of the vehicle to keep them safe. all the way up to the point where they're moving from the rear to the front seat and teen drivers. But ultimately, we need to pay attention to this back seat because, as I mentioned before, a lot of the safety features that have been there in the front seat haven't necessarily made it to the back seat. We used to have this huge disparity or this huge kind of advantage to the back seat where you were just sort of inherently safer sitting back there. However, as we've improved front seat safety, that gap has closed for various demographics. Just looking even at the stats with regards to the basic of safety measures, our seatbelt, you can see that over time we've consistently had approximately 10 percentage points or less of rear belt usage compared to the front seat. So that in and of itself is a huge opportunity for us. How do we get more people to buckle up when they're sitting in the back seat? Because we know that ultimately your seatbelt is your first line of defense in any crash. So when we look at what's available to us for consumer and regulatory testing in the United States, there's kind of this lack of dynamic testing that can drive rear seat advancements. Now, we have, so in the FMVSS, our federal safety standards, the minimum requirement for all vehicles that are sold in the United States, there are specific standards that relate to seatbelt assemblies and anchorages. However, these are only tested statically. They don't have a dynamic component to them. And so there's more ways that we could be challenging these systems to make sure that they are going above and beyond. I do have one small error here on my slide. For the consumer programs, NCAP, which is the new car assessment program or the five-star ratings that you might be familiar seeing coming out of NHTSA and that you would find on like the window sticker for a vehicle, there are no rear-seated occupants currently in any of their frontal impact tests, and they use the fifth percentile female in the rear seat. However, IHS has updated their moderate overlap frontal to crash test to include a rear-seated dummy, which is the fifth percentile female. So there are some advancements being made, but there's still a lot more work that can be done, even just for our baseline regulatory standards. This is just giving you an overview of what the various tests look like in terms of consumer testing in the US compared to, let's say, the European market. So for frontal impacts alone, you can see for the US NCAP program, we only have passengers or dummies in the front seats. In the IHS program, we have front and now rear seated passengers. However, the limitation there is that you still don't see any pediatric dummies in frontal impact testing. However, compared to like Euro NCAP, they use both women in the front and rear and driving positions, and they also have pediatric dummies. For side impact testing, again, just doing the comparison of the US NCAP program and IHS to the Euro NCAP programs, you can see that there are differences and gaps that can be addressed that we really ought to be able to like advance our marketplace here in the United States by including more dummy types and seating positions so that the testing that we're doing here in the US is going to advance safety. So what are some of these gaps? From the data, we know that female fatality and injury risk is higher than for males in certain crash types. So they're 17% more likely to be killed than a male occupant of the same age when belted. And when female occupant is belted, they have a 73% greater odds of being seriously injured than a seatbelt wearing male in the exact same kind of crash. Additionally, we don't have pediatric representation in US crash testing, and we're not looking so much at these other vulnerable types of occupants in different demographics, for example, the elderly, disabled, or pregnant. The US crash test programs currently don't include female dummies in any of the driving positions for the frontal crash tests as well. So let's talk a little bit more about the crash test dummies. Now, the dummies that we have, that are utilized for regulatory and consumer testing in the United States are really your large and average male crash test dummy and your small female. However, the crash test dummy group that is currently used is the hybrid 3 family. And what they did to create this small female and even the pediatric dummies is they take the average male dummy and then they scale that dummy down in terms of size to create your fifth percentile female and your pediatric dummies. However, we know that women and children are not just small men. They're not just children are not just small adults, and women are not just small men. And so we need to make sure that the crash test dummies and the tools that we're using for our regulatory and consumer programs to advance automotive safety are more representative and biofidelic to the body types and the genders that they are meant to represent. So it's important for us to have data that is coming from females to actually be the validation data behind a female crash test dummy, for example. There's also human body models, which are virtual computer models, right, of the human body that can allow for optimization for various different demographics, whether it's size, whether it's age. Um, the Global Human Body Model Consortium has various human body models that they have available across genders, across age, to be representative of vehicle occupants or pedestrians. That is one solution. There's also, for example, Linda is a virtual body model from Volvo that is representative of a pregnant female occupant because pregnancy changes the body, it changes how the vehicle restraint systems are going to interact with the human body. And, when you're doing virtual simulations and doing crash testing in that way, you're able to play with all of these different variables in order to determine how do they affect the outcomes. So in the United States, we have two programs that really focus on rear seat safety. Consumer Reports has our rear seat safety ratings. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, they've incorporated a rear-seated dummy in their moderate overlap frontal crash test. And looking at how this has changed the safety technology in the vehicles, how much more do we see these advanced seatbelt technologies, belt minders, um, and side airbags in the rear seat across model years. We've seen that it has increased because we now have consumer programs that are essentially grading and incentivizing manufacturers to actually pay attention to the back seat and put proven technologies there. So how can we all come together in order to advance crash safety? You have the minimum safety, which comes through our regulatory standards. And then there's consumer programs that are testing for additional margins of safety beyond the regulatory minimums. So when consumer test programs are testing scenarios and implementing various test conditions that differ from the regulatory standard and go beyond that, it incentivizes manufacturers to perform better in vehicle safety, to implement more vehicle technologies, and that can speed up regulatory enforcement. So consumer programs can kind of pave the way for getting technology into the vehicles, um, grading them for their performance of the implementation. And now when we have greater market penetration of these systems in the fleet, regulatory enforcement can come up behind that and be like, okay, we've already seen that you guys are able to put this in. We now have a minimum bar of what that performance level should be, and you have a greater compliance rate. Then in turn, when regulatory standards are now updated to raise, to meet where the marketplace is, it allows for consumer programs to be like, okay, great. The minimum bar has now been set at where we had been testing for. We're now going to up the ante again. We're going to continue to advance safety. And together with all of these systems working together, we'll be able to reach our vision zero of zero deaths and fatal injuries on the road. So what are the different ways in which we can accomplish Vision Zero? A lot of it boils down to, reinforcing our fundamentals. So I mentioned before, seatbelts are our first line of defense in a crash. So how do we improve seatbelt usage? How do we um, really educate and create awareness around why it's important to wear your seatbelt? And how do we put vehicle technologies in that are going to improve seatbelt use and really give occupants the benefit of that crash protection? We also need to focus on providing and improving crash protection for every seating position. Regardless of where you sit in the vehicle, you should have the same amount of crash protection available to you. It shouldn't be that one part of the vehicle is better equipped than another part of the vehicle. Additionally, as we work together, look around the table, who is being represented? What voices are contributing to the design, to the education, to how we're thinking about infrastructure? How are we making sure that all the various demographics and road users are being represented in our solutions? What is the data telling us? What is being presented as the gaps and the disparities? How can we now use the data that we have from the real world and um, from the injuries and fatalities to really now inform where do we prioritize, where do we focus our energy? And lastly, there's so much great research being done, which you're going to get to hear about from our other speakers as well, in the space of automotive safety. How do we create the right kinds of partnerships with these research entities to find the answers that we need to identify or to address the gaps and disparities that the data is showing us? And then how do we take the findings of those partnerships and now translate them into actionable plans in terms of design or education? Um, you know, whether it's partnerships with the local governments or infrastructures, how do we translate it into action? That is all I have for you.
Thank you, Emily. You do have a couple questions in the Q&A. So as I mentioned earlier, for everybody, we will come back at the end. Emily, if you want to answer those in the meantime, you can, and then we'll address them at the end. I am going to introduce our next speakers to keep things moving forward. I do also want to mention Emily Burton put in the chat that some OEMs apply pretensioners and side torso airbags in the rear seat. So our next speakers are Julie Mansfield and Jalaj Maheshwari. Dr. Julie Mansfield is a research associate professor at the Injury Biomechanics Research Center at The Ohio State University. Dr. Mansfield is the co-director of the Center for Child Injury Prevention Studies, which is a research consortium connecting academia with industry. She holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering and a PhD in biomedical engineering. Her work focuses on child passenger safety, especially the usability of child restraint systems and their performance in different crash modes. She has been a child passenger safety technician since 2014. We also have Jalaj Maheshwari. Jalaj is a research staff scientist at the Center for Injury Research and Prevention at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He has extensive experience working in the automotive safety space, dealing with research questions centered on automobile crashes, occupant safety and protection, injury analysis, injury prevention and mitigation, crashworthiness, and human-machine interaction. He has worked on projects involving computational modeling of occupants in crash scenarios, occupant sled testing, assessing driver behavior using driving simulators, and data analysis. Welcome, Julie and Jalaj. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. And thank you, Emily, for kicking us off and getting us started so strong. Today, Jalesh and I will be presenting our project, which is the development and evaluation of educational videos to help demonstrate some of the consequences of child restraint system or car seat misuse. We would like to acknowledge the National Safety Council for sponsoring this study through their Road to Zero Community Traffic Safety Grant. So thank you very much to the folks there for making this possible. A little bit of background. We know in the child passenger safety world that most child restraint systems, or CRS, are being used incorrectly in families' vehicles. And of course, any mistakes or misuse in installation reduces their effectiveness in keeping children safe in crashes. Studies indicate that somewhere between 46 to up to 95% of child seats have at least one installation or usage error. And of course, the severity of the consequences can vary based on the severity of the error. This is a problem we've been battling for a long time. Lots of different educational resources exist, but they all kind of include some challenges. So, one study interviewed a whole bunch of drivers of children and found that only about 61% said that they used the instruction manual when they installed their child seat. Only 29% looked at the labels on that product, and 15% admitted to not using any resources at all. They just kind of tried to figure it out as they go. Other studies have examined exactly what content is in these manuals and labels and found that the differences in wording and differences in pictures seem to have little effect on overall installation outcomes. If you've ever seen an instruction manual for a child seat, you know they tend to be very long, very complicated. There's lots of words, lots of text, and I think a lot of parents just kind of find them overwhelming in general. Another study found that the instructions were typically written at too high of a reading level for most consumers. We've seen a lot of advancement in this area in terms of using video content to educate, and we see some promising results here. Several studies show that video content can increase knowledge about child passenger safety, and other studies have shown that it can also improve correct usage rates for specific CRS. So, for example, watching an installation video that a manufacturer created for their specific car seat can be very helpful for consumers installing that product. In terms of general education, we also have some evidence that videos with biomechanical visualization, so that is kind of simulated crash test video footage, um, when delivered in the context of CRS education, was more effective than just the CRS education alone. So, showing kind of the biomechanics very visually of what happens during a crash and how do children's bodies kind of respond to crash forces. This type of educational education seems to really kind of hit home with parents and seems to really kind of make the concepts click in their mind a little bit better than just kind of going through the list of, okay, buckle this, now tighten this, and adjust this strap. It seems to really kind of reinforce the why behind all of the safety guidelines and recommendations that we have. However, as we were kind of thinking about this project, we realized there's not really any suitable biomechanical focused CRS videos that are widely available for use as teaching tools. So we have one or two videos out there, but Jalaj really kind of uh, and I were thinking like, okay, well, what if we created some more? What this seems like a gap that we have the tools to fill. So our hypothesis was that developing physically accurate videos depicting the consequences of various types of CRS misuse may serve as really powerful educational tools for both families and safety advocates. And we hypothesized that videos might enable long-term retention of critical safety concepts. So like I said, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So why should the harness be snug against the body? Why is the top tether important to attach? And kind of showing parents and showing safety advocates how these features work in a crash can really help reinforce the importance of them. So our objectives for this study were to first create physically accurate videos depicting the effects of correct versus incorrect CRS use for a pediatric occupant. Jalaj is going to present a slide on that because Jalaj is our computer simulation expert. So he created very accurate computer simulations using some really cool software, which he'll show you in a second. Our next objective was to evaluate and revise the video content with a cohort of child passenger safety technicians and instructors. So it was not just Jalaj and I making these videos. We had a couple of key mentors from NSC and from Evenflow who also helped support this study. And then we surveyed about 150 of you CPSTs out there to get your input on some draft videos. And then we used your input to really help refine these into really well polished teaching tools. Our third objective was to pilot the videos during car seat checks as a curbside teaching tool with families. And then our last objective is to eventually make all of these videos publicly accessible on YouTube as teaching tools. So I'm going to turn it over to Jalaj to explain the video creation.
Hey everyone. So objective one of the project was creation of these crash test videos. They were created using computational modeling, using physically accurate and detailed models of the vehicle, the child restraint system or the CRS, and the child occupant. Now, these computational simulations, for anyone who's not aware, are typically used to analyze kinematics, kinetics, and potential injuries of occupants in different types of crashes in injury biomechanics research in tandem with physical crash testing. So some of the slow motion crash test dummy videos that you've seen from NHTSA, IIHS, computational modeling is used in parallel to that to simulate large scale parametric studies. Now, here we wanted to use these simulations to capture realistic physics of the child occupant in a crash. So the child occupant was restrained in its age-appropriate CRS in an ideal or correct seating scenario and a non-ideal or incorrect seating scenario. So for this project, we had an 18-month-old in a rearward-facing CRS, a 3-year-old in a forward-facing CRS, and a 6-year-old in 2 different types of booster seats, a low back or a backless booster, and a high back booster CRS. Misuse cases for each of these scenarios were identified for the non-ideal cases, and frontal impact simulations were conducted to obtain the child kinematics in each scenario. Now, these computational simulations, like I said, accurately captured the physics of the entire crash, and the kinematics and interactions of the CRS and the occupant, and interactions with the vehicle interior, any contacts that may occur during the crash are captured. So here on the right, you can visualize an example of one of the videos that we created. So here we have an 18-month-old child occupant in a rearward-facing CRS restrained in the rear seat of a mid-size SUV. In an ideal or correct scenario on the top, and an incorrect scenario on the bottom, where we've introduced harness slack in the 5-point harness system in the CRS at the bottom. Sagittal or side views of the crash were extracted to serve as initial videos for each scenario, which were then used in Objective 2. So I'll hand it off to Dr. Julie Mansfield back to continue with our next objectives.
Excellent, thank you. So once we had some draft versions of the video, we created an online survey, which we then distributed to 164 child passenger safety technicians or instructors. They filled out some background info about themselves and their experience, and they reviewed 10 different draft videos. So like Jalaj said, we had some rear-facing CRS scenarios, forward-facing, and some booster scenarios as well, showing misroutes of the seatbelt over the body, loose harness, loose seatbelt, etc. Kind of a separate video for each scenario. We asked each CPST to rate on a 5-star scale. Does the content seem accurate? And the average rating was 4.7 out of 5 stars. So I think we did a nice job of making sure that we had accurate content. We asked, is the purpose easy to understand, which was 4.5 stars. Do you think caregivers would benefit from this content? 4.4 stars. How likely are you to use it during a seat check? 3.7 stars, so a little bit lower there. But they had some excellent suggestions of other educational settings where these videos might be useful, such as in classroom demonstrations, even during technician training, or even like social media sharing would all be really valuable platforms for this content as well. And then 4.3 stars for how likely they are to share in other educational settings, like some of those that I mentioned. So we also asked for open qualitative feedback on the drafts of our videos, and they had lots and lots of suggestions. We all know that CPSTs have eagle eyes for every little thing in those videos. That's how they're trained in their training, right? So we love that. And they had lots of great suggestions for how to improve the videos. So they said, okay, let's include like a demonstration along with the crash test footage to show how to install correctly and how they can correct these errors that we're demonstrating. So I said, okay, great. We're going to record some footage with dolls and kind of show how to prevent each of these misuses. they wanted a little bit more context about the potential injuries. So we decided to add some voiceover to explain exactly what's happening as the crash is happening. We did some awesome color coding. So green correct versus red incorrect example sides. And we double checked all of our terminology to match the CPST curriculum. So next, we have a finished video to show you. This is one of several.
The harness should be snug against the child's body. Test for snugness by doing the pinch test. If you can gather and pinch the harness webbing between your fingers, the harness is too loose. Tighten the harness by pulling the harness adjuster strap. Repeat the pinch test. If the harness is tight enough, your fingers should slide over the webbing without being able to pinch any excess. When the harness is loose, it allows the child to slide up the back of the car seat during a crash. The child's head may abruptly contact the front row vehicle seat, causing head or neck injuries. A correctly snug harness will limit the upward motion of the child by stretching gradually only a small amount. This lowers the severity of head contact and reduces the risk of head and neck injuries.
All right, so each of the videos proceed like that, and kind of taking one specific common type of misuse and putting it into context of what the consequences might be. So we have several of the videos completely done, and we have been piloting them at car seat checks with families. So we've partnered with Columbus Public Health, and we have been working during their car seat distribution days. And we've used these videos for a subset of the families. So we've recruited some families into our control group where they just do a normal car seat check without the videos. And then the other half of our families are being recruited into the intervention group where they view the videos alongside the normal car seat check as kind of reinforcement of some of the concepts that the technician is teaching them curbside. Then all of the families come back for a 1-month follow-up where we retest them and kind of have them install their car seat from beginning to end. And we see which of these skills really stick with them and which of these concepts they're remembering a month later. And from those two groups, we can kind of see if our videos are having a positive effect on the retention of those skills that they learned and the value of those concepts that they learned. So this is the part that we're currently still underway. So we've begun, I think I recruited family number 16 this morning. So we're working our way through this, but we've had a great response from families so far. Like all of the families who watch these videos were just like, wow, like I didn't know that. Like I learned something really cool today. And it's been really, really rewarding to see the responses to these videos and to see parents just feel like they are now empowered even more to take care of their children, which is really, really exciting to see. Like I said, we're still wrapping up the creation of all of the videos. We're still working on the booster ones, but once they are all finished, we plan to have them all publicly accessible on YouTube or a similar platform so anybody can access them anytime. And we will continue to kind of publicize their availability at different conferences and on social media, etc. So we're aiming to wrap up our project by mid-October. So this content should be available to you all soon. So in conclusion, this project aimed to create some teaching tools to visually reinforce key concepts in child passenger safety with the ultimate aim to reduce CRS misuse and improve the safety of children in vehicles. So like I mentioned at the beginning, we would really like to acknowledge and thank the National Safety Council for their funding and support of this project, and also a big thank you to Evenflow, who provided some of the materials for the computer simulation and provided some really fantastic mentorship along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie and Jalaj. You're getting a lot of positive feedback in the chat, so I encourage you to look at that. And my thanks to all of you for this important work that you're doing. Again, we will come back to questions at the end of the webinar. And so I want to introduce our next speaker, Lonnie Haschel. Lonnie spent 33 years in law enforcement and retired from the Texas Department of Public Safety in 2021. Lonnie became a certified child passenger safety technician in 2000 and a CPST instructor in 2001 while working for the Texas Department of Public Safety. Over the past 25 years, he's been teaching various aspects of child passenger safety while collaborating with hospital systems, government entities, advocacy groups, underserved communities, and caregivers from all walks of life. Lonnie is now a program manager with the Check to Protect program at the National Safety Council. And Check to Protect is a national campaign led by NSC that encourages drivers to check the recall status of their vehicles and have open recalls fixed immediately. Welcome, Lonnie.
Thank you, Amy, for that very kind introduction, and thank you to the other presenters. It's very insightful, and it folds right into what we're going to cover here. So with that, Amy already kind of covered this, but Check to Protect, I always like to do a plug. Vehicle safety recalls, over 57 million of them. NSC manages the Check to Protect program, so we encourage always everyone to check, including child passenger safety technicians. We've had over 3.5 million vehicles searched on the database since I got here, and it's integrated into the National Digital Car Seat Check Form. We'll talk more about this as we move through. So the National Safety Council has several programs that involve occupant protection, and many of you may not be aware of them. Because the Safety Council kind of operates behind the scenes. They lift people up to do the work that they need to do. We have employer traffic safety programs, vehicle safety recalls, obviously. We have parent education for new drivers. We have child safety in and around vehicles. And we are investing in the training of future safety professionals as we move through with all the work that's being done at the National Safety Council. We also align with the National Roadway Safety Strategy. Many of you are familiar with that, I'm sure, but these programs that I just mentioned are mindful of how the NRSS is integrated. It is central, or our programs are central to the safe system approach, and the safe system principles are shown here in the blue, which the mobility safety programs all align with and support. We also align with Road to Zero, and that was actually mentioned in one of the earlier presentations. We want to end traffic fatalities by 2050. That is our nationwide goal. But the NSC mobility safety programs maintain total alignment with that. We want to double down on what works, use advanced life-saving technology, and then prioritize safety. Because after all, safety is our middle name here at the Safety Council. So with occupant protection, our goal is to save lives, all of us on this call, every one of us, to save lives and prevent injuries by promoting passenger safety and occupant protection through education, mentorship, engagement, and innovation. That's what we do. And you folks are doing that important work. But NSC recently realized that people are using resources that they don't know are part of the National Safety Council. So we want to take this opportunity to increase awareness and understanding of all of the NSC programs that we have. So with that, motor vehicle crashes, and we all know that on this call, every one of us, they're leading cause of preventable injuries and fatalities in the United States. So the National Safety Council has resource development through the Child Passenger Safety Board, training through the Learning Portal, in practice through Safety Connection, and then we are gathering the data for those that use the National Digital Car Seat Check Form. You can attest to that. You can actually see what you're working with and the impact that you're having. So the National Child Passenger Safety Board, if you weren't aware, since 1999 has been managed by the National Safety Council. It's a body of very highly trained subject matter experts from different constituencies across the child passenger safety field. The board maintains the Child Passenger Safety Technician Certification Training Curriculum. And again, it is managed by the Safety Council itself. Under the Learning Portal, there's 58,000 accounts in the Learning Portal, and it's growing, which is awesome. More than 100 trainings are offered, and this offers an opportunity to streamline resources and access for our primary audience, which is you. And that's what we're wanting to do. The next one, we virtually meet with families through the Safety Connection. Some of you may have taken advantage of this or referred people, but we are able to use technicians from across the United States and virtually meet with families where they are. If they live in a rural area or an area where they don't have access to a child passenger safety technician to get help, we can help with that. Provides a unique resource for different populations, and we can mentor and support safety professionals, and we also capture data through that. Next, we have the National Digital Car Seat Check Form. Again, many of you are familiar with this. We have more than 300,000 forms submitted to date. This is, for those of you that don't know, it's a free web-based and mobile app. used to streamline car seat check data collection. It makes it so much easier when that supervisor comes to you and asks, what have you done? You can go to the National Digital Car Seat Check Form dashboard, and you can actually show what you've done and find the errors that you're dealing with in your community. That fills gaps in existing data, and it's used by a whole bunch of folks, but not limited to local injury prevention programs, the auto manufacturers themselves, and the child car seat manufacturers use this information as well. So it's very handy and very widely used. So these are all of the programs, and you notice there's some gaps missing. Now there's resource gaps for high-risk groups. So following the data and offer some of that you just heard, NSC plans to offer new opportunities for resources in addition to the existing child passenger safety programs that we already have. There'll be a focus on evidence-based research, like the presentations you just heard, to include adults, pregnant occupants, teens, tweens, school-age children, who will also be riding in booster seats. We already have the audience. We want to take advantage of that time to make sure we're passing on additional information to try to reduce those numbers that you saw in the crash statistics earlier. So we're going to build on what we've already learned. We're going to take a holistic approach to vehicle safety education and protection for all occupants and boots on the ground. You have told us there is a broader need for occupant safety. So building on what we've learned through all of our programs, we're not going to reinvent the wheel, but simply take the information we have and seek out those new partnership opportunities that was mentioned earlier in one of the other presentations. 2025 will be a development period for this holistic approach as we bring together the high-risk groups. So with that, the National Safety Council is going to have an Occupant Protection Specialist Certification Program. Again, 2025 is that development period for this approach. Going to use what we've learned through the foundation of child passenger safety for occupant protection. We recognize the importance of the work that's been done. And there's a quote by Isaac Newton, and some of you may be familiar with it, but it says, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." And over the past years, the car seat technicians and instructors and mentors that we've all had are those giants. So we're going to take what we've learned and build on that. And we're going to be asking for your assistance as we go through this. So if you would like to provide expertise or input, please reach out to us as we build this program. So every person, and we heard this earlier, every person and every seat deserves to be as safe as possible. So NSC will continue to wholly support the existing child passenger safety programs. Why do we need something different? Well, again, motor vehicle crashes remain that leading cause of death, and we need that broader approach to talk about other people in the vehicle, the adults, the teens, the people driving pickups that don't wear seatbelts. So it's just important to stress that we're going to continue to support the existing child passenger safety programs, but we're going to build on it and call it an Occupant Protection Specialist Certification. It's going to broaden the scope of occupant protection efforts, extending beyond the foundational focus of car seats. And think about, each one of you, think about when you first got your driver license. Did anybody sit down with you and explain how to adjust a seatbelt, or did they just say buckle up? Did they explain that you could adjust the shoulder portion of the belt? Did they talk about adjusting the seat and where the seat belt should lie? Those are the kind of things that we would be looking at with these other groups, the adults, the teens, the tweens, and such. So we're going to add future trainings as we build this out. It's going to be a multi-year plan for occupant specialists, protection specialists, to expand into broader topics for proper seatbelt use for specific needs. The high-risk driving behaviors that impact occupant safety that we all see on the news nightly: distracted driving, impaired driving, aggressive driving. For those that are familiar with the child passenger safety enrichment trainings, this is going to have a similar look to it. We're going to include pregnant drivers and occupants. More information on these things will follow, but this is the kind of thing that we're going to build out. So the new certification credential, you can keep your child passenger safety technician status and add an OPS certification to what you're doing. It'll broaden your qualifications and knowledge in occupant protection across all age groups. And if you're already a certified child passenger safety technician, there is no additional training required. Your expertise remains the same. Many of the same core concepts and skill sets are going to carry over. It's just that we're going to hone down and fine tune that opportunity we have there with that family in a child passenger safety inspection or event setting to also turn to the parents and caregivers and ask, hey, while we're here, do you know how to adjust your seatbelt to make sure you're optimizing safety in your vehicle? The OPS training is going to integrate more hands-on learning and prioritize content. The certification fee right now is going to be a promotional period. So the promotional certification rate is $50, and that's going to be in through the end of October 2025. NSC is going to manage the OPS certification. You will keep your existing certification level and your new OPS certification for 2 full years once the program rolls out in 2026. So it's, like I said, it's a work in progress. There's more information to come on this. So we would encourage you to follow the National Safety Council Occupant Protection on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram for any updates. And again, reach out to us through those platforms or through your individual contacts as we continue to move forward and try to fill those gaps that we just heard about in earlier presentations. So with that, I'm going to hit the stop share button, Amy, and turn it back to you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Sorry, I had a little trouble getting my video back on. Thank you to all of our speakers. Again, I'm going to ask everybody to put their questions in the Q&A section in your toolbar. I am watching the chat. Some of you have your comments going only to hosts and panelists, so I just wanted to point that out in case it's helpful. Emily, do you want to answer some of the questions you received first, the ones you answered individually?
Sure.
Thank
So we
you.
had a couple of questions with regards to truck underride crashes and how, like, all the advancements that we have really for the occupant cabin are not as effective in those types of crashes. And really, I think the question is more about like what can be done to improve those scenarios, or how we can advocate for more advancement there. So my response is primarily that there is ratings for trucks done by IIHS. They have their tough guard rating. There's like 3 scenarios. You can see more about it on the IIHS website. And I think really encouraging Congress and NHTSA, like making them aware of those, encouraging them to utilize the data from IHS Hildy and from that rating program to really provide guidance as to how the regulatory standard might be updated to improve underride crashes. And if there was a second part to the question with regards to like concerns on NHTSA's analysis on the cost benefit side. And really my encouragement is, find the docket that relates to that analysis and provide your public comment, right? Like then it's on the records in the docket, they have to review it. You can present that information to your state representatives to have that also be broached when they're in Congress and such. And NHTSA also holds public research meetings. I believe it's like once or twice a year, and there may be presentations where they're like sharing the work that they're doing with regards to this topic. And so that would give you an opportunity to raise your concerns and questions there as well. And the second question is about for people looking to purchase a car or car seat, what are key factors or test results that they should pay attention to? So a point of clarification, Consumer Reports does not conduct vehicle crash testing. We only conduct car seat crash testing. That does go beyond the federal standard. It's really your IIHS and NCAP programs that do the vehicle crash testing. And what we would encourage you to do is when you're purchasing a vehicle, really look at both crash avoidance as well as crash protection. So some of the tests that we do at Consumer Reports on our track, which you can kind of see in my background behind me, things like our braking and emergency handling, routine handling tests are all going to speak to how the vehicle might perform in your emergency situations and how you might be able to effectively avoid a crash. So you want to look at those ratings. You also want to pay attention to what safety equipment is on the vehicle. So look for these proven technologies such as automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection or highway speed capable, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic warning. These are all technologies that you want to have on your vehicle as standard equipment. And I believe that that covers the ones that I got. And I see that there's two in here that I think are for Lonnie.
Yeah, Lonnie, if you're not familiar with the Q&A, I did answer two of them.
Okay.
Let me scroll down. What is the anticipated certification training format for the OPS, online or in person?
So it will be in person initially. We're hoping to have it 3 days in person. And then actually, we're not hoping, it's going to be 3 days in person. And then we will move to a hybrid format at some point in the future where we can have both. But for right now, we're going to focus on this development period that we have for 2025 and get the 3-day course up and running, and then we'll move out from there.
And then is the NSC OP certification linked through Safe Kids?
So they would be, NSC has its own programs that I kind of went through all the different programs. This would be another part of that. So you would have the child passenger safety technician certification through Safe Kids, and then you could have the occupant protection specialist certification through the National Safety Council.
And then a couple of the questions are similar. What will the training entail for folks who might not be currently certified CPSTs? And along that same line, the next question is, what training are OPS who are not CPSTs going to get, and are they able to perform car seat checks? And same thing, will this new OP certification allow people to check car seats without being CPSTs? And do you have the National CPS Board support? And when can we do this certification? So several questions in there. I'll comment on the one question. This is completely separate from the National CPS Board. NSC receives funding from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. We have what's called a cooperative agreement with NHTSA, and the board is part of our NHTSA funded programs. And so this new program is funded by NSC, working in collaboration with our partners. And so I hope that clarification helps. Lonnie, I'll let you answer the rest of it.
Okay. So to answer the question is, an OPS is going to receive very similar training on child passenger safety as a child passenger safety technician does. So with an OPS certification, you will absolutely be able to check child safety seats. The other branches that we're looking at, like pregnant drivers and such, that might be accessible to somebody who is not wanting to be a certified car seat technician, but they want to help maybe their clients at a doctor's office or something, and it might be beneficial to those individuals. So that's where that goes. But the foundation is going to be that child passenger safety that we've all been taught. They're going to be something very similar in that OPS certification. Like I said, standing on the shoulders of giants, we're going to take that information that we already know and build upon that.
And I don't know if it's helpful to share. NSC has a large team, well, relatively large team of experienced child passenger safety technician instructors. And so we don't take any of this lightly, is the point. We're all very seasoned. But Lonnie, we're getting more questions. It seems like this is a redundant system. I know you went over it in your presentation, but can you
Mhm.
elaborate again on what is different?
Absolutely. So child passenger safety technician focuses solely on that child passenger in the back seat. Or if you have, that when we all cringe, we have to put the kiddo in the front seat and move the seat back and all that. But that's the sole focus of a child passenger safety technician. The occupant protection specialist will be that holistic approach where they will have the information to teach people how to put their children in the back and educate caregivers. It's still an education service, but then go above and beyond that and talk to, let's say, each and every one of you that's on this call is a car seat technician, have talked to a mom that is expecting. Do you provide education to that expectant driver or expectant passenger when they're sitting and they're wearing their seatbelt? I know I hadn't all my years. I know it's in the owner's manual. I know that there's other information in the owner's manual of the car, and we all look at those all the time, but it's always specific to child passenger safety. So this is going to expand that, build on what we knew or what we know, and then move it to other folks, other focus areas, adults. How do we adjust the seats? Did you know you have knee airbags? Most people don't. You think of the instructors on this call. When you're teaching the certification course, how many of your students are surprised to learn about all the safety features that a car has when you're going through the manual? We want to do that for our end user, for our parents and caregivers. So that's what this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to build upon what we started with, the child passenger safety aspect. And then we're also going to then move to the front seat and talk about older kids and teenagers and pickup trucks and all these other areas that Dr. Thomas pointed out are some gaps in safety.
And I think that last part of what you just said, Lonnie, ties into this next question of how will CPSTs broaden their knowledge without taking this additional OPS course and training?
So it's going to be a National Safety Council product. So I would encourage you to use the curriculum that's going to be designed for these various levels, for the occupants up front, for the pregnant drivers, for the teens, the tweens and such. But you could absolutely do it on your own, but this is going to be prepackaged for you, give you the materials, and then that'll enable you to go out and then do your thing.
We've had lots of questions.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go back to Brad because he was one that asked for clarification. He said, this makes sense to me, but it seems like it could be an additional training such as special needs. And so I just want to clarify, I can't remember if we've already said this in this webinar or not. NSC is continuing to support the existing CPST system as it functions right now. So taking special needs as an example, also school bus, those are additional trainings after you become a CPST. And so what Lonnie's talking about are additional focus trainings on those specialty areas after the basic certification, the basic OP certification. So Lonnie, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all. And I just want to call, we've got 2 more minutes.
Yes, and that's kind of the 30,000 foot view is once you get that OP certification, and as we build these out, and that's the thing I can't stress this enough. 2025 is where we're going to be pulling subject matter experts in, the folks on this call, listening to what you have to say and build these out to add on to the basic program that we've got to make sure that we're working on filling those gaps to those individuals that we may be missing.
And last question that we have time for, but I think all the speakers shared their contact information. So please feel free. They've all already given consent for me to say this. Feel free to email them individually. But one more clarification, Lonnie. Andrea says, I think you mentioned that if you're a CPST, you will automatically be an occupant protection specialist. Will the CPST curriculum be updated at some point to include info regarding all passengers, not just children?
So the answer to that is, if you are a child passenger safety technician, you can enroll on your own. It's not going to be an automatic thing in the occupant protection specialist program. It's going to be completely separate. The OP specialist program is the one that will have all these new endorsements. The existing child passenger safety technician, I can't speak to that. Well, they're going to still focus solely on child passenger safety, and we're going to support that. But we want to move on and move into a different area because we're missing folks. We want to make sure that everybody's safe. And the bonus is, if you are already a CPST, CPSTI, a proxy, there's no additional training for you. You simply can pay the fee, and you'll have this additional certification, and these endorsements then will come as we roll them out. So I hope that helps. And more will be posted on that Facebook page, on LinkedIn, as things come clearer. But we wanted to give you an advance heads up as to what's happening and why it's so important. And we thank you for all the work that you do. Each and every one of you, when your head hits the pillow at night, know that you're making a difference, and we are grateful to you for that.
And I want to clarify, there's a lot of questions we didn't get to. NSC is sharing that this is in development. We are not rolling this out. The people can enroll and they can participate in that development process through special committees, pilot courses, things like that. But at least for the remainder of 2025, we're sharing that this is coming and this is a development period. So I think that that's one clarification. And then information on how to enroll. It's not on the NSC website. Please follow those social media channels that Lonnie mentioned: National Safety Council, Occupant Protection. And we will have a future update focused on this topic specifically. So be on the lookout for that. Again, I want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you to everybody that attended. We appreciate you and the work that you do. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.